Hello, I'm Steven,
And I'm Aaron.
and we have just seen
Nickel
Nickel
Boys.
Boys, a film that's been out for a little while now, and we are finally getting around to it in large part because it is a contender for Best Picture at the 2025 Oscars. It stars Ethan Harris, Brandon Wilson, Hamish Linklater, and it is directed by Ramel Ross.
So this is one that's been out for a little while. Been hearing some things about it, but I've kind of purposely kept away from it just because I didn't want to know too much. I always like being surprised by these types of movies.
I actually didn't know anything about this. I had not heard about this until I found out it was an Oscar contender.
Yeah, so I always like to try to see all of those before the show, just because I like to see what's up for the awards.
I don't think we saw any advertising for this, any trailers at any of the screenings we went to this year.
Not that I can remember. Although, like after watching it, I imagine it would be kind of hard to market it just because of what it is. But in what it is a story about a young black kid who is wrongfully convicted of a crime and sent to a reform school where he befriends another black student. And you find that this place is very abusive and very racist and segregated, and they have to endure all kind of hardship.
The Caucasian members of the reform school are subjected to considerably better living conditions than the black ones, who are often shipped out for free labor.
Yeah, the white people are basically like employees of this place, and the black people are used for slave labor almost exclusively, unless they need to use them to do some of their underhanded dealings.
This is based on a novel that is inspired by real events that took place in Florida. It was the Dozier Reform School, I think was the name. This is the Nickel Academy Reform School.
Yeah. And it's Nickel Academy in this film. And the black students there, they're called Nickel Boys, which is where it gets its name. The thing about this movie that makes it unlike pretty much any other movie about this kind of subject matter is that just about everything, takes place in first person. So it's a POV perspective that follows mostly this one central figure named Elwood in the movie. And then it occasionally will flip to the other character he meets and befriends named Turner. How did you feel about the use of that perspective in the movie?
Well, I was not feeling this movie at all for about 40 minutes. When it started, I noticed that the main character didn't really feel proactive in the events that were taking place. It starts with him as a boy, and he's basically observing like the world around him, like he observes the orange trees, or you see him on the playground and he like falls off the monkey bars, and then he's outside a store looking at a bunch of televisions broadcasting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on them, and you can see his reflection. So the main character of the film, for a good chunk of the first 40 minutes, doesn't really say much, and I don't think he really does much to move the plot forward. He merely reacts to the things around him. And that had me concerned. That had me worried that this entire movie was just going to be this guy observing things. And in my mind, as I was watching it and becoming increasingly concerned, I was calling it Hardcore Henry Civil Rights Edition, which is kind of crass, but that is what I was feeling. But then, at the 40-minute mark, unexpectedly, the POV perspective shifted from Elwood to this character Turner, and that was the first thing that made my ears like prick up, like, because I didn't expect that. I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought the whole thing was going to take place from one point of view, and then that was actually kind of interesting, and that becomes very useful because the character of Turner is somebody who's been in the reform school for a while. And he has experience, he knows how it operates, he knows that it is a dark place, and his perspective becomes a counter to Elwood's because Elwood is more optimistic. He really believes that people can make a difference.
Yeah.
He really wants to be a part of the civil rights movement. He's very active in that.
Yeah, Turner's been beaten down by the system and feels like, the game is up. He even says in the early portions of the movie, the game is rigged. And Elwood is very proactive in trying to fight against the system and trying to figure out ways around it and how to get past it.
So after that perspective shift, I started to become considerably more immersed because now the main character I felt was proactive and he had something to counter him that provided conflict and somebody to conversate with, somebody to talk to, and then I was really enjoying it and I got more and more immersed into it, and by the time it was over I loved this movie. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. I almost agree with you about the beginning. I think I got into it a little bit quicker than you did, just because it's photographed like very beautifully, and there's not a lot of other things like it. I like the way they were, showing off his perspective as a child, how you're constantly kind of looking up at things, the way they would jump forward, and I don't know, that stuff just kind of worked to me. I feel like there's definitely a lot of setup in the first third, and I think part of that is to kind of settle you into the, POV style of the movie. But like you said, once he gets there and meets Turner, that's kind of when the movie gets flipped on its head, and everything kind of changes for the better going forward. That's not the only perspective that they use. There is also the use of third person perspective, where it's like directly behind the person. And they do that for a very particular reason that kind of is shown by the end of the movie.
That was something I was curious about. Did you think that it was absolutely necessary for this to be shot in first person? Because I did think ultimately it worked, but I was asking myself after the fact, was the POV thing necessary to benefit the story, or was that POV thing just there to conceal a twist in the narrative that happens later in the movie?
I can definitely see that, although I don't think that's what they were going for, because the thing about the twist with the third person perspective switch that they do every once in a while is if they were going for concealing what the twist was, I don't think they did a super great job of it. That's one thing I kind of figured out very early on. I can't say the reasons why, but there's things that you notice and you see when you're looking at the character. You kind of go, oh, I see what they're doing, and I kind of know where the story's going now. So that kind of was a tiny little bit of a letdown. But to answer your question, I feel like the intention was more to directly put you in the shoes of the character. That way you kind of understand what they're feeling. It's almost like the events are happening directly to you. And like you were saying with him in the beginning, being more of an observer, I think putting you right in their shoes kind of eliminates the audience just being an observer. It's more like they're a participant and they're trying to, fight the system with Elwood and Turner.
I knew that they were trying to put you in the shoes of the main character, but it didn't quite register with me at first because I was thinking about how a first-person video game, it works because you have control over it. You move the character, you navigate the plot. It's like you're a prisoner of the main character's eyes.
Yeah, we've seen other people mention... There's one scene where a character, it's Elwood's, I think, grandmother.
Yeah.
In the movie.
He calls her his Nana, but yeah, it's his grandmother.
Yeah, she shows up to the school only to find out that they're not allowed to interact with their kids at all. They're kept away from them on purpose, and she comes with a gift, and she just wants to see him and talk to him. Only she's not allowed to, but she does run into Turner. And this is when the camera is in Turner's perspective. And then she gives Turner a hug. And this was the first time I actually started to feel myself being emotionally connected to the movie.
That too was a turning point for me. That's when I started to think, oh, there might actually be something to this POV thing.
Yeah, and a lot of it's because of Anshanae Ellis's performance. But the way that the perspective is used and the way she kind of approaches and talks to the camera, you really do feel like you are that character and that she's directly interacting with you. So when she comes to hug you, it almost actually feels like you're hugging somebody, even though you're in an auditorium with 20 other people. It feels like it's just you and that other person for just that few minutes that they're together.
Yeah, it didn't work for me at first, but it became progressively more effective as it went on, and I came to appreciate it. I'm not entirely convinced that it was totally necessary. This could have been filmed in a conventional sense and absolutely worked, but I'm not at all upset that they filmed it the way they did. There's many ways to tell stories, and
Yeah, I don't know that it was 100% necessary, but I definitely appreciate it being the way it is. I don't think I would change it.
were you reminded of After Sun at all watching this?
Yes. Yeah, and I'm almost like upset that you brought it up first because I was very much thinking about that the whole way through because After Sun is the last movie that I can remember that kind of hit me in the same way where it feels like I'm watching something that has never been made before and it's like a new idea and it's a new way to film something. And it's a new way to connect to a story and characters on the screen in a way that feels like 100% realistic and not phony in any kind of way.
In the case of After Sun, shooting that movie the way it did, that absolutely was necessary because that movie is all about perspective and about how
Yeah.
memory, the way you remember things, is different from the reality.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about that pretty much the entire way. Very, very After Sun like. So the central performances, you've got Ethan Harris, I think is how you say it. Maybe I'm not sure, but he plays Elwood, and Brandon Wilson is Turner. How'd you feel about their performances?
Well, it was the Brandon Wilson performance that was the one that got sunk its claws into me and really got me into it. Because as I said, I at first thought that the main character was a little too just observational and really distant.
Yeah, it's funny. Elwood is kind of the driving force of the narrative, but Brandon Wilson's character Turner is kind of the heart of the movie.
Yeah. But as the movie went along and he got more embroiled in the darkness and grimness of what's going on, I really did come to care about him as well. So I thought he did a solid job.
Yeah, I liked both the actors in this. I think Anjanae Ellis Taylor steals the movie as Elwood's grandmother. She has a few really great scenes, especially in the beginning, just kind of setting up the kind of character she is and the kind of family relationship her and Elwood have. And then some of the things that come back later in the movie with her are like very moving and emotionally powerful. Kind of, I guess, if you want to call it the weak link, it didn't bother me that much. It only bothered me like when he first appeared because it takes like a short adjustment period. But it's Hamish Linklater as
Spencer.
yeah, Spencer. He basically is like the warden of Nickel Academy. He's got this very southern like thick accent, and I'm pretty sure that's not how he talks, and it sounds like a put on when he first comes on the screen. But the more you kind of learn about his character, the more it doesn't matter, just because he's just kind of like this evil, horrible guy, and it almost adds to him.
Yeah, when he first appeared, I recognized him pretty quickly. It's Hamish Linklater, albeit mustachioed, and he was doing that southern voice that is very, like you said, thick, and it does sound very theatrical and put on, but at the same time, I was kind of taken with it. I was like, I think he's doing a good job.
You get used to it relatively quickly, and like I said, his character is so despicable that you just kind of...
I feel like I have encountered people in Florida who talk like that.
Yeah, he's really easy to hate, and the voice, I guess, is a big part of that as well. Everybody else in the film is good. Of course, there's a lot of other young actors playing the rest of the Nickel Boys. It is kind of focused on just these main two, but you get to see a little bit of some of their stories popping up. There's another section later in the movie where it kind of flashes ahead in this third-person perspective where he meets somebody who was at the academy. I thought that scene was really good. It just felt very natural. There's a lot of stuff going on like underneath the words that they're saying to each other.
Yes, and now that you mention it, that scene in particular registered to me as real because I've had conversations with people that sounded very much like that.
Yeah.
So that scene really did ring true to me.
That was a high point. The music is another like big standout in this. I don't know like how you felt about it, but I love the music in this. It's really unconventional. It's hard to even describe how it is. It's a very ethereal quality to it. Sometimes it's just, it almost feels like noise and static.
I too was very taken with it. It's pretty outstanding.
When like the perspective was taking some getting used to in the first third, the music was definitely an early hook for me. It's just exceptional the whole way through. And even though you're kind of getting used to the perspective, like I said, the cinematography is really great for something as simple as first person's perspective, especially in dialogue when it can very easily just be pointing the camera at somebody and having them awkwardly looking into the camera. There's only a few times, and it's really only in the beginning where I was like, okay, something feels slightly weird about this, but it goes away, and it just feels like very normal and natural for the rest of the movie. Another movie I was thinking of is The Zone of Interest.
Yes, I did think of that as well.
It's almost like the opposite of The Zone of Interest, where The Zone of Interest is the perspective of the villains committing the atrocities. In this one, it's the perspective of the people enduring the atrocities. I mean, you could say that that's been done before, like
Yeah.
Schindler's List, putting you like directly in the chambers and stuff like that. But this felt a little different just because it is so like specifically into characters, heads, kind of experiencing what's going on.
Yeah, I was feeling Shawshank Redemption, I was feeling Zone of Interest, I was feeling After Sun, and I was feeling Life, the Eddie Murphy Martin Lawrence movie.
Yeah, all good movies to be compared to. So I think this one's a real winner. I can see why people are giving it the praise and the awards.
Another thing I couldn't help but think, but when the movie was over, is that the Emilia Perez Oscar nomination seems like such a joke now.
Yeah, in comparison, it seems so unwarranted and unearned.
Yeah, I said in our review of that I wasn't sure if I liked the movie or if there was just enough good scenes in it to make me think I did, but this thing is the total package. This is the kind of movie that should be on that Oscar list.
Yeah. Glad it's been nominated. Glad we finally got to saw it. Or glad we finally got to see it.
No Oscars for grammar.
Well, we can clip that.
So, what is your final number grade on a scale of 1 to 10?
I give it a pretty strong 9
Yes.
out of 10. It's not perfect just because like there is a little bit of adjustment in the first third where you're getting used to the perspective, you're getting used to the way the characters talk, the way the dialogue is directed right at the camera.
I could feel my grade increasing as I was watching it. When it started and I wasn't into it, I was like, this is a 6. This is a 5, borderline 6. It's Hardcore Henry, and I didn't like that film. And then when it started to pick up, I was like, okay, we're becoming a 7 now. And then it went along. It was like, oh, we're going into hard 8 territory.
Yeah.
And then by the time it was over, it was like, that's a 9 if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, it's a very emotionally investing movie. Very moving by the end of it. And the perspective is a big part of that. It's just a level of immersion that you don't really get from a lot of movies.
So that's Nickel Boys. Definitely see it.